I'll take care of the chat. Here we go. We're live.
You live?
Woohoo! We're live, everyone. I think.
Oh my God!
Let's try this. Let's do this, guys. Woohoo!
All right, guys. So my apologies for the issue here. This is the first time we had these type of problem or this type of problem on the stream. So just recap. So we're good.
I think so. Kenny looks good.
Okay. So to recap, what's going on for the backpack and the Star Wars backpack and the Pixar beanie, the winner's Nano bot, and then the Disney villains set. We actually have Mickey's Magic. So now we are actually drawing for the very well thought of that Disney's toiletry set with soaps and everything else. Now, for those of you for the person who wins, you have a choice. Either you want Goofy or I could give you Eeyore. So you're gonna tell me what you like. So for that one, we are doing the drawing now.
Drum roll, please.
There we go. And for that, we have Cargo Sparrow. So Cargo.
Woo, Cargo. Cargo's awesome too.
And the final and the last grandfather or grandmother, a Coach bag here. There we go. And this is actually two. Wait, this one. We have Dr. Kara for the Coach bag.
Ooh, another great person. Hey, Dr. Kara.
So, Dr. Kara,
guys.
Everybody, you have until Sunday to reach out to me, private message me with your information. I'll send it out. So with that said, let's not waste any more time. We are here to talk about our technology. And we have Phil on here. Phil, he's gracious enough to kind of talk about, different things. And what I've actually done is that based on a lot of your feedback and questions to me from private messages to my any questions on my videos, we've actually come up with certain items for us to talk about. And the first thing we'll do is the first 5 questions actually come from you guys already. We're going to name that. But I've been reached out recently by a few people that want to see some of the stuff that I use. So I'm just going to show you. I'm not going to talk about this. This is my 4K camera. This is the Lumix 300 FC300. So this is what I use.
Yeah,
so,
even I asked you about it the other day, Kenny. That camera's awesome with that sunset. It looks great. It was really cool.
So every one of those 4K camera videos you see, this is it. This is what I use. Very cool. For those of you who want to see the link, I put that into the body of the initial video, which I'm going to update. And then for those of you who ask me about gimbals, or ones I use when I do use my iPhone to film, here we go. This is the Osmo 2. I actually use this for my iPhone when I do videotape on this.
Awesome.
So that's it. These are the 2 things that I use. So you guys have it. These are two of my I guess plethora of things, of tools to use.
Awesome.
So let's.
Hey, Kenny, let me tell you one thing. We started a new stream. I think this is going to be the official stream. So I think you should start from the beginning there. Introduce us. Introduce you. Okay. Start the streamer because this is what's everyone's going to see from right here.
Okay.
So let's do this.
So this is welcome to the AlphaTraveler1. You know, this is part of our small channel introduction, and this one is all about technology. My name is Kenny. For those of you who don't know, I'm AlphaTraveler1 channel, and my partners here right here today, and my co-host is Rob Fuzz.
What's up, everyone?
Rob, he is, if you guys don't know him already, one of the best guys around. You know, he's really cool. He's all about the community. So go hang out and go check him out. And then we have Phil. And Phil, we're from the Photo Gear and Fun, and he's fantastic. I went on his channel and looked at all his videos on technology and how he actually make recommendations and things like that. I'm like, hey, this is really cool stuff. You know, next time I buy some new gear, I'm actually gonna go check him out first. So this is the reason why. There you go. So this is the reason why I got him on here. So, you know, if this works out really well and, you know, we think that there's actually a need, Phil's going to become probably one of our regulars. So with that said, what I want to do is to kind of go to the next piece. The next piece is some of the biggest questions that everybody has asked me about, you know, about our technology, right? So I have 5 common questions that everybody asks. So the first thing for you, Phil, is it says, how much difference does the type of equipment make? And what that means is you're talking about, you know, when you're
easy one,
streaming
no
or
problem.
filming.
That's easy.
Yeah, that's a trick question. Can you guys see me?
I can see. When you talk, it switches to you. So.
Okay, great. So the gear makes no difference, and the gear makes all the difference. It just depends. If you're going to be filming in bright light and you want to kind of shoot a vlog, gear doesn't make that big a difference. The difference between, let's say, your cell phone and a camera like this, as far as quality goes, roughly the same. When you talk about things like zooming in or being in low light when you're in a Disney ride where there's really low light, then gear makes a huge difference. It's all about, photography is all about light and the amount of light that you can get into the camera. The more light you can get into the camera, the better off you'll be overall. So it makes almost no difference depending, or it makes all the difference if you want to specialize. I know it's kind of a broad question, but we'll get into it a lot more here.
Okay, so the second question, I think you kind of touched on it, but maybe you could touch on it more. It says, what should I consider when buying equipment?
Budget, first of all. So the biggest question people ask me is, when should I upgrade? And the answer is, you should upgrade when your current equipment is limiting what you can do. So story is king, regardless of whether you're vlogging or you're doing videos like I do, whatever the case may be, your story is more important than the equipment. However, if you're being limited by your equipment, let's say in the case of a cell phone, your cell phone doesn't really shoot well in low light, and you want to go on It's a Small World or any of the Disney dark rides, or just in areas where it's really dark, your camera phone's not going to serve you very well. So you just have to figure out, okay, am I limited by my equipment? Can I tell the story that I need to tell with the current equipment? If I can't, then it's probably time to consider an upgrade. And budget is key among all of, in my mind, right? It's because we live in the real world. We don't have unlimited budget. So budget really is kind of king when you think about criteria, at least in my mind.
So the third most commonly asked questions, what do I have to consider when adjusting to, say, filming in a Disney dark ride?
That's a great question. And I actually have a very practical demonstration. The camera I'm using here is a Sony A7 III, and this has a lens that lets in a lot of light. And I'll show you an example of this in a minute about what they call the aperture. An aperture really is like your eye. So when you're in a dark place, your eye opens up so that you can let in more light. It's the same thing that the aperture on a camera does. So right now I've got it set to a proper exposure, and this is going to look bad, but I'm just going to give you a demonstration on what you can do. So this is, I'm changing the aperture now, and you can see that it's getting darker. And we'll get into the particulars here in a minute, but basically this is properly exposed. And now I'm getting lighter and lighter, and you can see that I'm a little too bright here. And the reason that I'm too bright right now is because the aperture is able to open up quite a bit. So I'm gonna bring it back to a proper exposure.
I was going to leave you alone like that.
So this is a proper exposure, but really, when you think about, again, I kind of covered it. Photography is all about light and letting in light, and your aperture is what lets in the light. There's something called your ISO, or ISO, some people might call it, which is the sensitivity to light. So you can change your ISO as well. But when you do, that really degrades your picture quality. So when you change your ISO, you get more noise, or you get something that just doesn't look very good. So ideally, you want to have an aperture that opens up very wide. So just to give you another example, this is a lens that opens up really, really wide. And you can see that little hole right there is when the aperture is completely closed. And now you can see I'm opening it up, and you can see.
Oh, wow.
It's awesome.
So this is what they call a fast lens. And I'm not going to make this too technical, but you might hear that term, fast lens or bright lens. That means that the aperture can open up really wide, so you can let the light in. And light hits your sensor, and the more light that hits your sensor, the better your photograph or your video is going to be, basically. So you want to try to look for a camera that has a good balance within your budget, a good balance of features, one being the maximum aperture, they call it, which is basically how wide that can open up.
That is amazing. I actually love seeing the iris open up. It's just fantastic.
Yeah. Hey, question in the room. Meg from Mickey's Magic want to know. I think you mentioned it. I just wanted to make sure what camera you're using now to live stream.
Yeah, this is the Sony A7 III or A7 Mach III, which is, it's what they call a full frame camera, which basically means it has a big sensor. It's, for a consumer camera, it's the biggest sensor that you can get, which again will let in more light. And the lens that I'm using is a third-party lens, or a lens that's not made by Sony. It's made by a company called Sigma, and that has an f1.4 aperture. So it's I'm sorry, I don't want to make it technical, so I'm going to try to use generic terms, but it's a wide lens, which means you can see a lot of the scene. And it's also a fast lens, so you can see, if you look at the background here, you can see that it's kind of blurry, where normally if you close that aperture down, that will become more in focus. Again, I'm trying not to be too technical, but this is the Sony A7 III with the Sigma 16mm f1.4 lens. And it's a fairly expensive camera, and it's hard to get right now. It was a $2,000 camera, and the lens, I think, was around $450. So again, budget will really dictate what you can afford, but within each budget, there are definitely cameras that will suit your needs. And we can go through that. I've got a bunch of them here that we can show.
Oh my God. That would put me in a poorhouse. $2,000?
Yeah. So again, I want to say that I'm lucky enough that this is my only hobby, and I do save to try to get these things. So I know that $2,000 is a lot of money for a lot of people, myself included. I'm not going to try to say that this is nothing, right? This is something that you might want to save for, but you don't need this to go and start telling your stories. I started out, I'll show you the camera I started out with. It's a $400 camera. Again, $400 is a lot of money, but in the world of cameras, it's really not that much money. If you pay $800 or $1,000 for your cell phone and think about a $400 camera, if that's what you're going to use to tell your story, you know, it's probably worth that money. And again, worth is relative to each person.
That's awesome. So we have two more questions that's mostly asked, but I'm going to swizzle this around because this makes more sense now. So the next question is, would you future-proof your gear, and why? And part of it, people ask me, should they future-proof?
Yeah, I would say to the best of your ability within your budget. So one thing that you can do is, this is a Panasonic Lumix camera. It's one of my favorite cameras. It's a $400 camera. It's got a flip-up screen. I've got something on here to protect it from the wind. But
hey, Phil, I think did you freeze up? Did he freeze up, everyone?
Did I freeze?
I think you froze up.
You. Yeah. You froze up. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. So you can hear my audio, but you can't see me?
Yes, yeah.
Give me one sec.
I have a feeling this is definitely a Google issue today because, as you know, I've successfully streamed all those times. Yeah, and this is the first time I'm unable to.
Yeah, something is not right. Just give me 1 second here.
Okay.
Technology.
That Sony camera is amazing. It really is a great camera with that, and the combination of that lens and that camera, it's great. It's definitely not everyone's budget, but if you want to take that next level, he showed that's like the high end level. That's really a good camera. Yeah, definitely.
So just while Phil is trying to get things done, just give you an idea for my 4K camera. It went from $800 now to Amazon, which is about $400. It is a very good deal. Let me tell you. So when you guys have a moment, go to my channel. There's a video called Blue Blood Moon. Look at the zoom on this thing. I could actually see the craters on the moon, and that's how great of a zoom it has.
Yeah. Phil, maybe come in and come out of the video. Try that.
Can you see me now? It's moving on my screen.
It's just now it's black screen.
It's black screen.
At all. So just maybe come out and come back into the stream. So we have some gremlins tonight, guys.
All right,
so,
give me 1 sec. I'll be back.
Okay, no problem. My cell phone could shoot in 4K. Unbelievable. Yeah. The problem, Mickey's Magic, the 4K files are huge though. Like I shot a video of my kids making pizza. It was like a 5-minute video, and it was like 10 gig of storage. That's the only negative. So it's the only negative I don't like about it. So
there you go.
Mr. Phil. Very nice. He's back.
All right. I switched over to the webcam.
Okay.
So Kenny, that camera that you have, by the way, I think is a great choice, especially because of the zoom. So what I wanted to show was this. This is a Panasonic Lumix ZS70. And if you look at my channel, I have a review on this. It's got a flip up screen. It's got 4K. It's got a touch screen. It has a viewfinder. This camera will provide just about everything that you need except for good low light filming. So the sensor in this, which is what captures the image, we talked about that a little bit, is the same size as your cell phone. So as far as video quality goes, you'll get about the same video quality out of this that you will out of your cell phone. But this has a killer zoom, and this zoom is about equivalent. Actually, I think it's a little greater than Kenny's camera. So you can see I'm zooming out, and you can see that that's my desk over there. And now I'm zooming in, and you can see if the camera will focus, it goes up to what they call 720 millimeters. And again, we won't make this too technical, but this zoom, it's a 40x zoom in this camera. So this camera, when you shut it down,
nice.
It's completely contained. You've got your lens cover built in. This fits in your pocket. It weighs probably 3/4 of a pound. The sound for a camera that doesn't have a microphone is pretty good. This is, if somebody says, I want to do 1080p or maybe 4K, and I have a really low budget, but I want a camera that will be able to allow me to do vlogging and to be able to take photographs and be able to zoom in, this is a great camera. The Panasonic ZS70, awesome camera. It goes with me, literally goes with me everywhere. It's in my car. It's in wherever I am. It's with me. So there are some things that it doesn't do well, like I said, like low light. But again, I know $400 is a lot of money, but in the camera world, that's not that much. That's my #1 recommendation for somebody who has moved on, wants to move on from their cell phone and is thinking about maybe shooting 4K. And even if you don't shoot 4K, one of the advantages is that you can shoot in 4K, and then you can kind of crop in if you want to on the video. If you're going to produce a video at 1080p, which is what a lot of YouTubers use, that gives you the ability, if you use software, editing software, to crop in on that picture. So in essence, it gives you zoom capability without you losing any quality. So that's one of the advantages in general of shooting in 4K and then producing the video on YouTube in 1080p or full HD.
Hey, Rob, what do you use, by the way?
I'm a Nikon professional shooter. I have a lot of Nikon gear. I have that. It's someone in the chat room, I think Steve was saying he uses the Canon G7X Mark II. When I'm just walking around, I use that camera. It's a great camera. It's comparable to the one Phil's holding up now. Phil, you want to tell everyone what that? I know what it's called, but you want to tell everyone what that thing on top is? The Mr. T look.
So I didn't make up this name, but it's called a dead cat or a dead kitten, depending on what
it's called the dead cat. It's awesome.
So if you look at a little bit bigger microphone, and we can talk about this if we have time, but this is something that will, it prevents.
Looks like a mouse is in your drawer when I have it around too.
Yeah, it prevents the wind noise or reduces the wind noise. So if you're in a very windy situation, and these smaller cameras are prone to that, especially if you have the screen flipped up, the wind's kind of deflecting, coming back into the microphone. This is something that cost, I think it was $20, and there were like 10 of these in there, and they work so well.
They come with 10 for $20. Wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I'll see if I can get a link and provide that link, but they're really inexpensive and they work really well.
And I agree with you, because for my my Lumix here, I actually had to get this external mic. It works so well because I'm going to Venice Beach, and it's a lot of wind. Based on this, I mean, in my video, you don't really hear the, the really bad wind anymore, just because of this. This little furry, fuzzy thing helps.
Definitely does. Dead cat, baby.
Dead cat.
So last question.
I'm a cat lover. Like I said, I didn't make up that name. My cat's in here somewhere.
So our Alpha Traveler family of people are going to give you a very, very hard question now.
All right,
and this
lay it
is
on me.
and this is probably for you as a Nikon person. You may think about that, but so the question actually is, what brand do you like the most and why?
Oh my goodness.
I could answer his question if you want.
So let me, boy, I'm gonna skate around this as best I can. My favorite camera is a camera that does the job I need for it to do. So my absolute favorite camera of all time is a Nikon D7100 with a Sigma lens. Hold on a second, let me grab it.
Cool. I didn't think it was going to say that. I love Nikon too, but I am a Nikon professional. I have 2 Nikon professional cameras. So, and one she uses Nikon, but with the mirrorless cameras and everything, Nikon actually just released the Nikon wireless mirrorless camera yesterday. They just announced one. So, wow, look at that camera, guys.
So
That's awesome.
this is
awesome.
not me bragging.
Oh my God, what is that?
It has a lens hood on it. So this is.
That was the best response ever.
Just a quick primer. There are basically 2 types of cameras, and these terms are probably familiar. One is called a DSLR, which this is, and in general, the bodies are big, right? They're made for pros, like Rob was saying. This is a pro body. They have things like dual SD cards in case one fails and things like that, and they're made ruggedly. But the biggest difference is they have a mirror. So inside of this body is a mirror, and when you look through the viewfinder, the light comes into that mirror and reflects back into your viewfinder, so you can see what you're taking a picture of. Now, there's no electronics there. It's just the light comes in, reflects off the mirror, and you can see. So if it's dark, it might be hard to see necessarily what you're shooting. For mirrorless, they don't have that. The light goes onto the sensor, and it's electronically transmitted either to the screen or to a viewfinder. So they're just different types. Generally, these can be smaller because there's no mirror. The mirror is fairly large, right. So it does take up a lot of space. And I don't know how well you'd be able to see that in that camera, but what you're seeing here is actually a mirror, if you can see the reflection. So that mirror is now down, so it's going to reflect light back up into the viewfinder, so I can see. When I take a shot, that mirror flips up instantaneously. That exposes what they call the image sensor, which is actually what captures the light to create the image, and then closes back down. There's a shutter too, but basically that mirror mechanism is noisy and it requires a lot of space. With these mirrorless cameras, you don't have that.
All right, Phil. It seems like people want to know how heavy that thing is.
Oh my goodness. And that's the thing. You're not going to vlog with this. The reason this is my favorite, just to finish that thought, is I love to shoot birds. I love to shoot wildlife. And this lens allows me to get really, really close to birds. And I have another website called Bull City Pictures, and Kenny, or maybe, I don't know if Rob can put the link up, but I'll give that link if people are interested. And you can see some of the photography that I do. So I do 2 types, really. I do wildlife, primarily birds, and I do a lot of urban or street photography in my town. So I have an Instagram that is just about the town where I live, Durham, North Carolina. And for that, I use these smaller. This is a Fuji camera. This is a mirrorless camera. So I have 2 of these that I take with me. And I put those in my bag when I'm doing my urban photography. They're really light, but the quality of the photographs is amazing. So I take those. I wouldn't take this. This doesn't go anywhere with me, but together it weighs about 8 pounds with the lens and the body. So it's heavy.
Wow.
And a lot of people who use these type of cameras will have a monopod, which is like a tripod, but it's just one column. So you can kind of manage that weight. It's very heavy.
So one of the things that a lot of my supporters, my subscribers ask me is, what is the best camera for the dark? And for me, my experience is a Canon GX7 Mark II. I just love that camera. I have it. I'll use it I'll use it, but now I kind of moved on to the Panasonic more because I want to film in 4K. For those people who don't want to film in 4K, to me, the Canon GX7 Mark II films the best in the dark.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?
It's a great camera. I actually use this quite a bit, and it does have. So we talked a little bit about apertures earlier, or how much light it can let in. So this has an aperture of what they call f1.8, which means that it really will let in a lot of light. It does have a smaller sensor. So the low light capabilities, and again, I'm sorry if this is getting too technical. I'm trying not to make it. But
you're doing good.
Basically, low light capability.
Technical stuff's confusing me. So I don't think you're confusing people.
If you can open that aperture up, and then you have a bigger sensor on there, which is the part that actually captures the image, that's nirvana for low light. So this Sony that I'm filming on right here is a full frame sensor, and it has an f1.4 lens, which means it can open up really wide. In fact, this was an f1.4 lens, so you can see it opens and lets in just a lot of light. So when you're in low light, you're going to do better with a larger sensor and a lens that lets in more light. However, for the size and the price and the capabilities, this is probably the best vlogging camera today. I mean, I don't know if folks follow the Tim Tracker, and a lot of people use this G7X too. It's a very popular vlogging camera because it does really well in low light, and it's only 1080p, or it doesn't shoot 4K, which some people don't necessarily find as a positive, but the colors look really good. It's just a great all-around camera, and it has something called a neutral density filter. And again, not to get too technical, but it's just like sunglasses for your camera. So if you open up that aperture, you need sometimes if there's too much light, you need to cut down on that light. And if you don't want to close the aperture, which you really don't, what you can do is use what they call a neutral density filter. And it's just basically a gray piece of glass that is like sunglasses for your camera. So this has one built in. So if it's really bright out and you still want to open it up and let a lot of light in, and the reason you would do that is so that you can get that background that's really kind of blurry and blown out, then you can use a neutral density filter, which is built into this camera, which is awesome. So on those times when it's bright out and you still want that kind of blurry background, this is a great camera for that. And there aren't many cameras that have that. I think the older Sony model had it. The RX100 Mark V had it. The Mark VI, which is the new one, does not. But this is a rock solid, probably the best vlogging camera in this price range. It's about $650 these days, but it doesn't shoot 4K.
Let me jump in here a second. So what we're going to do for guys, I did see a whole bunch of people, ask about, putting links to these equipment. We'll do that. Yeah. I'm going to finish this up tonight. I'll work with Phil to put all that in there, so you guys could just drop and click, and if you want to buy, by all means buy, right? So one of the things,
Kenny,
Steve,
real quick. I'm sorry, Kenny. I actually have to go because I had a 6:30 hard out, so you guys are a little too late. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, definitely agree. Cameras are great. I have the Canon G7X, 7X, whatever. I forget the model number. I always forget it. So it's a great camera if you're just starting out. $600 budget. It's a great little camera. And then Kenny, everyone was asking at the end if you can repeat the winners again. A couple of people missed the winners in the beginning, so. And I'm sorry I had to go, guys. So All right,
All good.
and thank
Have
you
a
so
good
much.
one, my friend.
You have some great cameras there, Phil. I hope we have. I hope you have your back again. I hope I have some more time to hang with you guys. I appreciate it. So, thank you guys.
So,
All right, great.
Steve's World. You asked about what that little fuzzy thing is on Phil's camera. Phil's going to try to put a link to that as well. So it essentially, I think Phil, you said it was called the dead cat.
It's called the dead cat. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's called the dead cat. So you kind of put that over the microphone, and it actually lowers the wind noise. So hopefully, that kind of helps you understand. So I think one question that came in to me via Twitter is this is going to be really hard. I think for at least for me, because I don't dibble and dabble anymore in in different price points. So I can't. So this is going to be hard. So the question is, Phil, can you tell me what is a good camera in the 300 or less price point, and from a 600 to 300 price point? So my assumption is that they're looking at those price points to see what is the best, and potentially they could go up to 600.
Yeah, and that's not an uncommon question. I think between like $300 to $500 really is a lot of people's budget. And I think that's a fair budget. For $300, that's a tough one. I would say if you have a cell phone, use it. So I've got the LG G6. It's a year and a half old, whatever. The cameras on these are amazing. You got an iPhone X or an iPhone 8, they shoot 4K at 30 or 60p, meaning that the quality is just amazing. So for $300, it's tough to find a camera that can beat what you have in your pocket, most likely. Up to $600, now that's an area where things get competitive. So the camera that I showed first, this Panasonic Lumix SC70, it's a $400 camera, and that price probably will come down a little bit because it's not an old model, but it's an older model. The G7X, which to me is probably the gold standard for vlogging if you're talking about 4K, probably the best vlogging camera for the money, is around $650. I think there's probably going to be a new model coming out soon, so these prices will come down maybe a little bit, and you can find it refurbished. I actually bought this one refurbished, and that's another point. You don't always have to buy new. So if you buy factory refurbished, I bought this from Canon. So somebody had it, it wasn't working. They sent it back to the factory. Canon fixed it to specifications, so that's like new. And I paid $450 for it. So check out factory refurbished cameras. That's going to be, if you're not afraid to buy something that is technically used, it still comes with a warranty usually. That's a really good way to get more camera for your money. Definitely check those out. If you're not afraid, if you want to buy new, I completely get that. But that $650 camera. Also, this is the Sony A5100, and I have a video on this. This camera is 4 years old, I believe, but we were talking about sensor sizes earlier, and this has a really large sensor. So I don't know, the cell phone sensor is
huge.
Yeah, so this is 4 times the size of sensor that you would find in a cell phone. This was on sale recently with a what they call a kit lens, which is a lens that does a pretty good job, really, quite honestly, for $450. So if you don't mind old technology that shoots only 1080p, this is a Sony A5100. Great, solid camera. The autofocus is really good, surprisingly good, actually better than the autofocus in the Canon G7X II. So this would be, if you can find it on sale again, $450. It's another great camera, especially for vlogging. And I don't know if anybody watches World of Micah, but I know that Micah uses this camera to do his vlogs as well. So it's not a plug for Micah. I don't know him personally, but check out his channel if you want to see what this camera can do. It's really
so great. Here's a question from Fast and Fearless. It says, is the Sony RX100 outdated now?
It depends. So the Sony RX100 Mach 5. So they actually continue to sell the Sony RX. So the Sony RX100 line started with just the Sony RX100, and then it went to a Mach 2, Mach 3, Mach 4, Mach 5. They just released a Mach 6. So if you're talking about the Sony RX100 original, no camera is outdated if it does what you want it to do. And that's really my honest answer, right? If it does everything that you want it to do, it's not, who cares about tech? I mean, I do. I work in technology. I love technology. So I like to keep on the bleeding edge. But if you're going to go out there and your main purpose when you're creating a channel or shooting video is to capture video that you think is good for you, then who cares, right? If you think 1080p is good video to capture, then capture 1080p video. Don't worry about 4K. Don't get caught up in the Me Too's, right? I need 4K. I need this. I need that. You need what you need. And if you, again, if we're going back to a conversation earlier, if you find that you're limited because you can't do something like focus faster, or the autofocus doesn't seem to work for what you're doing, then yeah, consider upgrading. But I would say the Mach 3 and up are all still great modern cameras that certainly would do well for just about any purpose, and they're very small.
So I have another tweet from someone asking me, or his personal message me. He said, "What are your thoughts about GoPros?"
I think they're great for a specific purpose, and I think they can also be used for vlogging. So I have the Hero 5, and it shoots 4K. And the biggest thing for me about GoPro is it really has that distortion. They call it kind of the fisheye effect, which basically means around the edges, the picture loses quality. It looks like it's a little bit warped. I think it started with the Hero 5, where you can go to a more normal looking picture. And if you can get that to do vlogging, I think it works fine. The only thing is the sound is really not that good. So when we talk about creating and what creators should do, video is important, but video is not nearly as important as audio. And if you ask anybody, if you go to a channel and the video is not great, but you can hear the audio and the audio is clear, people will tolerate that a lot better than they will a good quality video, but the audio is terrible when you can't hear, because we're trying to convey a message, right? So that's the most important thing, telling your story. And part of that story is always going to be audible. So having good audio definitely to me is important. And that's why when we talk about different cameras, so these have built-in microphones. The GoPro has a built-in microphone, but you can buy an extension for the GoPro or an adapter for the GoPro to connect what they call a lavalier microphone, which is just this little tiny microphone that will clip on and will get you really good audio. So you can definitely buy a microphone for it. And then these other cameras like the G7X, they don't have a microphone input, which means you can't connect an external microphone. So this is a Panasonic camera. And by the way, Kenny, I love Panasonic. I've got 4 or 5 of them. And this has an input where you can connect a microphone. So you can connect something like this, which is external. And what that does is it gives you better sound, but it also focuses the sound on what's in front of the camera, or you can turn it around to what's behind, but it's more direct. So your audio goes kind of right into the microphone, where with the microphones that are on board, it captures everything around you. So you'll hear if there are cars or, whatever, you'll hear all that stuff when you use these internal microphones versus when you use something like this, which is called a shotgun microphone. So if you can get a shotgun microphone and your camera would have to have an input, then you're going to get better quality sound. So really, a lot of people when they're vlogging look for a flip out screen and they look for a microphone input. And this is the Panasonic Lumix G85. This is a phenomenal camera. The stabilization in this is amazing. It's almost gimbal-like. And as well as this is a Panasonic GX85. Panasonic has amazing stabilization. They have amazing features. Dollar for dollar, I think Panasonic delivers the most. But this is another really good vlogging camera because you can flip it out and kind of look, and it's what they call fully articulated, which means it can move pretty much in every direction. So this is, I know I've shown a lot of cameras, but this is probably, you can get a G7 for around $400 or $500. So that's another one. I don't have one. My daughter has it, but that's another one that has a microphone input. It has 4K video and really, really good 4K video, like GH4. If you're familiar, Kenny, with the Panasonic GH line, like GH4 quality video, and you see that every day on Amazon for $500.
So mine is it's same exact thing. You can flip this over, which is great. I mean,
right.
it's Yeah, and I could see myself, and I love the Panasonic, so I definitely agree with you. So I have another instant message, which, man, these questions are really they're going to be getting tougher and tougher for you. So this one said, Phil, do we use a gimbal versus an internal camera stabilization? What works the best?
What works the best, absolutely unequivocally, is a gimbal. What works the best for you in each situation greatly differs. So I can tell you that I have a cell phone gimbal, and I have a gimbal that will hold pretty much all the cameras that I've shown here. And I can tell you that I almost never use the gimbal. So to me, if I need to tell a story and I'm going somewhere, I'll throw this Panasonic, or I'll throw this, this Lumix is with me all the time. So if there's something that I have to do, and it has pretty good internal stabilization, it's all about being practical. So we talk about, again, I'm in technology, and I love gimbals. I love what they do, 5-axis or 3-axis stabilization. And they've got these motors, and it's really cool stuff. But cool doesn't help you tell your story. And really, as a creator, again, it's all, I hate to go back to it, but that's really, in photography and video, it's all the same. You want to tell the best story that you possibly can. And if you're encumbered by your technology, you're going to be frustrated. You're not going to shine through in your story that you're trying to tell. So I would say, if it doesn't bother the people that your audience, or the people that you're trying to create for, then use the stabilization that's built in. This Panasonic GX80 is unbelievable. I shot a video handheld when I was at Disney of the show in France, and it looked like I had it on a gimbal, and my hand was shaking. After a while, you try to hold the camera, it gets pretty heavy. This is it's amazing. So this has a lens, and they call it dual IS, or dual image stabilization. So if you combine this lens with this body, it's gimbal-like. So it really, I would say, first of all, gimbals can be expensive, and they can be impractical, especially if you're traveling. If you're traveling, unless you do it for a living, forget about gimbals. But if you need to have the most stable footage, then the gimbal is the way to go. But I would say, in 75 to 90% of the videos, having the most stable footage isn't going to gain anything, or it's not going to help you tell your story necessarily. So
fantastic. I don't have another private message, but they were getting really hard, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up to our chat to see if anybody has any additional questions for Phil. Because, Phil, I think this was a fantastic stream, with your knowledge and having our supporters see the type of cameras are out there with their possibilities. I think it just makes our community that much bigger and better. And that when they do go and do videotape, see, hey, look, when I go and look at an equipment down the road, this is what I'm looking for. And they could see or hear by what you just said. And it's just fantastic. So I'm going to open up to see if anybody has any questions.
And while you wait for questions, YouTube is an amazing resource. We live in the information age, right? We've never had more information available, especially video information available at our fingertips. So if you have any questions about a particular camera, if you go to YouTube and type it in the search, probably somebody has done a review on it. Maybe I have, maybe others have, but there are so many really good reviewers out there that you should be able to find, for almost any camera, you should be able to find 2 or 3 different opinions. So go ahead and see what the people have to say out there. Like I said, there's a lot of good content creators for reviews.
Phil, Steve's World wants to know if you made the dead cat.
Sort of. This one I kind of split, but no, this is made by a company called Rycote. And again, I think it came with maybe 10 of these, and there are like the 3M kind of strips on it on the back. So they're really easy to put on. But this one I split because there are 2 microphones, as opposed to this one where I just put it on. The microphones are close together. But it really does, again, sound quality, buy one of these. If you have a camera and you're using the internal microphones, get a dead cat. It's a $10 or $15, $20 investment. Make a huge difference in your sound. If you're ever in the parks creating, or you're out at a sunset at the beach, it's going to be windy almost all the time. Taking that wind noise out makes a huge difference.
So I don't see any other questions except for that dead cat thing, because it seems like Steve's world want one of those.
I love cats. I wouldn't kill a cat.
So I don't see anything else. So Steve, do you? I would like you to kind of like from our perspective, like the technology perspective, give the most one paragraph to our viewers to say what you want to say to them, you know, in terms of technology. What it could be, hey, keep going, use certain technology, you know, anything you like.
Yeah, I would say, I said it earlier, just don't get caught up in competing with anybody or the Me Too's. Do your research, certainly, right? Because even $300 is a lot of money to invest. Know what you're getting and then know how to use it. So if you have all these different types of cameras, and I do, right? And I use primarily two types. But if you're in the field and you can't figure out how to use your camera or technology, again, if technology is encumbering you from telling your story, then you need to reconsider what you're doing. That's why simple cameras like this, they call them, this is a point and shoot class, right? So you turn it on video mode. It has automatic everything. You point it at yourself and you just tell your story, or you point it at the subject and you tell your story. I can't stress enough how important it is to have something that is easy to use and something that you're familiar with, so that you don't get caught up in missing shots, which I've done a lot. And because I have so many different cameras and I do different reviews, I've sometimes have a hard time remembering how I do something on a different camera. And that can be frustrating, and it can cause you to break the continuity in your story or miss shots. So it's really important not to worry about getting the latest and greatest. Get the equipment that you know will work for you, become familiar with it, and stick with it for as long as you possibly can.
That's fantastic. And you know what? That message, when you first said it, I actually looked back and it made sense to me, because my very early videos, I used those handheld Sony video cameras. They were terrible. And I did my research, like you said, on YouTube, and they said, you know, a Canon GX7 Mark II was great. And let me tell you, it made world of a difference. It went from, you know, getting maybe 1 thumbs up to all the way up to 10 and 15 then after that, because of that. So thank you very much for that, my friend. Well, who inspired, well, there's a question, I guess. Who inspired you to do YouTube? That's for the two of you, on both of us. So Fast and Fearless asked both of us, who inspired us to do YouTube? So why don't you go first?
Sure. Actually, my inspiration was, if I'm talking about people that I saw that I admired, Tony and Chelsea Northrup. They are amazing teachers. They've got a YouTube channel. It's got something like 1 million subscribers. But if you want to learn photography specifically, and they do video stuff now, that's kind of where I started getting serious because of them. And I just wanted to try to, I love teaching. So in my job, I do a lot of teaching. I've taught at colleges. I just really love teaching. So my inspiration was the Northrups for YouTube specifically. But my main inspiration is that I want to be able to try to help people as best I can. And if you look at my videos, I always try to respond to my comments as quickly as I can, because the motivation for me really is to help people out. I'm not in this for money, right? My YouTube channel isn't even monetized. So money is not my motivator. My motivator is wanting to try to help people and make sure that I can help them understand an extremely complex subject or subjects as best I can. And I'm working toward doing that. And that's my motivation, really, and my inspiration.
Well, you know, that mine is probably a lot cornier. But the reason why I got into YouTube was I did a lot of travels by myself. I've always loved traveling. And then got a role that allowed me to travel a lot. So I would tell my family and friends, hey, I did this, I did that. They're like, yeah, we don't know. So if we can't, you can't prove it, you didn't go. So I'm like, okay, then I'm going to put it on YouTube for you to see. So that's kind of how I started. And I did that for about 1.5 years, maybe with 20, 10, 15, you know, subscribers. And then there's a bunch of, you know, really, you know, a bunch of, you know, our friend channels here. They popped up here, and this is Morty. He's the first one. He's like, hey, you got a really good channel. Why don't you just, you know, do a little more, you know, to promote it? And I'm like, you know what? You're right. You know, we also have Disney Vacation Family, you know, and everybody else kind of say that to me. And literally about 10 months ago, when they did that to me and said, yeah, you got to start doing this, I went from like 40 subscribers. Now I'm up to almost 1,100. So kind of realized that you have to have the drive. You have to have good equipment. You have to be able to get into a genre, because if you look at all those videos out there, some people who don't have a defined genre, they're lost.
Yeah. So
you don't know your target. So that's the type of, you know, type of motivation that I needed. I needed to understand what my genre is. Do I have good equipment? I tried really with crappy equipment. It didn't work. So, and then I kind of realized, you know what? If you upgrade, you do it right. And when you do it right, it forces you to actually have a different perspective when you're filming. Because I have to me, this is a really good camera, the Panasonic.
Yeah.
And it's heavy, and it's heavier, and you have to film a certain way. And if you start filming a certain way, you kind of start thinking very differently as well. So that's kind of how I started, and then that's how I started improving everything I do now. Is because everything I do, I kind of realized, do I, as a subscriber, want to see it from this angle? Or does that make sense, right?
And the one thing that really surprised me, and I think a lot of people don't understand unless they're creators themselves, is how much time it takes to produce one video. So if you look at, so you know, right, there are a lot of creators in the chat. They all understand that. They get it. Before I get into this, I didn't think it would take that long, right? I was cocky. I'm like, oh, I can knock this out and do it in one take, and it's going to take me an hour, right? No, I don't think I've ever produced a video in an hour. We're talking 8 hours or more, depending, right? So it's really a commitment in time. So you really have to love doing it. You have to love the process of shooting. You have to love planning out your shoots. You have to love editing. You have to love everything, or you're just not going to stay and you'll have no staying powers. But it's a labor of love. And certainly if you're good enough at it and that's your goal, you can turn it into a business and you can certainly make good money. There are obviously lots of people who do it. That's not my goal. I don't intend on ever making a living from it. But, you know, I mean, a nice little side income is not bad. I'm sure, you know, lots of people would take that.
Let me tell you, because I've realized that in order for me to produce something really good where I'm going to get 30, 40, 50 likes, right? I actually have to dub some of the audio on the side. I have to take and retake. And on the verbiage, the words that I have to take, I have to type that out.
Yeah. And
I have to redo it, right? So just like you, it takes me more than 8 hours to plan this and put that together. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's probably overexposed, but that's my script for the video that's coming out.
Oh,
and
wow.
that's just one page, right? So especially in my area, there's a lot of technical stuff, and people really get on you if you make a mistake. It's unbelievable. They're offered this for free. I'm taking my time and I'm trying to do this out of the goodness of my heart, but it's amazing at times how, especially in the camera world, how brutal people can be if you misspeak, if you get a spec wrong or something. So I always try to make sure that I get those right, but it's a challenge, just like with anything else, but it's fun.
You know, this is amazing. I mean, I want to thank you. I'm having a lot of fun talking about this. I think a lot of our supporters really enjoyed this, and this allows them to grow. And what I like to do is potentially, you know, have this type of session once a month, maybe, you know, for different people, and, you know, with different types of cameras. Maybe one day we'll talk about action cameras, another DSLRs, right? I think that will be really helpful from really all our creators' perspective.
Yeah, that would be great.
So I think, you know, for me, that's great. So again, everybody, thank you all very much for coming. You know, Phil, thank you so much for, you know, hanging in there with us.
Thanks.
This is the first
Thanks for having me.
I've ever had this stream issue, so my apologies. By tonight's end, I'm going to make this video the full-time video. I'm going to convert everything over. If you don't mind, some of the technology, some of our folks over here on chat want to know where you could get it. So provide, your link to me, and I'll put all that links on there for our people. Yeah, so everybody, there's a message I want to tell you is that, in our community, we have so many cool people with so many talents, just like Phil. So we're going to be bringing a lot of people in here. We're going to engage a lot of people to make everybody grow. Stay strong, stay committed, know what you're doing, know your genre, know really how beautiful you can make things, but never give up. With that said, thank you all very much, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Thanks.